Does your mind keep asking, why? Why me? Why this? Why now? Without ever landing on an answer? Fellow listeners, welcome to the path to calm. Stop overthinking, become present, find peace. Today we're exploring Stop Thinking About It by Nick Trenton. Today's section gets specific about what separates the kind of thinking that keeps you stuck from the kind that actually moves you forward. We're going to break down the science of abstract versus concrete thinking and what each one does to your nervous system. Then we'll get a step-by-step method for shifting gears the moment you catch your mind spiraling. Switch your thinking style from abstract to concrete. The most dangerous thing about an academic education is that it enables my tendency to over-intellectualize stuff, to get lost in abstract thinking instead of simply paying attention to what's going on in front of me, instead of paying attention to what's going on inside me. David Foster Wallace. Big idea? Anxious overthinking is not just about the volume of your thoughts, it's about the style and character of those thoughts. Maladaptive thought patterns tend to be abstract, overly general and judgmental, but style can be changed. There's one unacknowledged reason why many of us are reluctant to let go of the overthinking habit. Deep down, we believe that over-intellectualization is actually useful. The interior life of the mind is a major part of many overthinkers' identities. They may be capable of a high degree of reason, creativity, and insight. They may be intelligent and value intelligence. They may be sensitive, deep thinkers, and they may also use intellectualization as a defense mechanism, a way to avoid distressing emotions or to delay taking difficult action in the real world. The mind is a phenomenal thing. Abstract thinking defines our species and has been at the foundation of almost every human advancement. Language, philosophy, mathematics, art, all impossible without the ability to conceptualize, theorize, and imagine. But overthinkers tend to be overusers of this gift of abstraction. It may come as a surprise that overly abstract thinking is associated with depression, anxiety, and a general lack of well-being. In a paper investigating the effectiveness of an online CBT program on rumination, the authors are careful to note that a maladaptive style is characterized by abstract, overgeneralized, and evaluative processing, whereas an adaptive style is characterized by concrete, specific, and contextualized processing. There's something quietly clarifying about hearing that research has a name for the pattern: abstract, overgeneralized, evaluative, because most of us have been living inside it without a label for it. And here's something you can try right now. The next time you notice a physical sensation that kicks off a spiral, a racing heart, a tense chest, just describe it. Literally. I feel tension across my shoulders. It started about 10 minutes ago. That's it. Not what it means, not what it says about you, just what it is. Now, coming up, Nick walks us through exactly what the abstract spiral sounds like in real time and why it's so hard to break out of it once it starts. So, what exactly does this thinking style look like? The abstract processing style is characterized by why questions, high-level conceptualization, overgeneralization, evaluation, and judgment. For example, you may notice that you're feeling anxious and that you're suddenly aware of your heartbeat. Your thoughts look a little something like this. Why is my life always like this? Why does this happen to me and nobody else? I have so much on my mind, and now I have to worry that I have heart disease as well. Who designs humans anyway? What's the point of all this suffering? God must be having a laugh at my expense. Now, take a good look at the quality and character of this stream of thought. Notice the why question, and also notice that these are the kinds of questions that don't quite have an answer. Or if they do, the answer will be an almost unfathomable can of worms. Notice how these thoughts are generalized. They're about everything, about life, about God, about human nature, not just what's happening right now, the awareness of a heartbeat, but the big questions of why existence must be this way and what it could all possibly mean. Notice the evaluation and judgment implied. The experience is not just picked apart and analyzed, but condemned. Notice finally the utter impotence of this line of thinking. It may sound harsh, but these almost academic musings just don't go anywhere. They don't terminate. They pose questions that are impossible to answer and open up avenues of thought that can theoretically go on forever. It's not hard to see why this style of thinking leads to and maintains depression and anxiety. It amplifies the analytical powers of the mind, but fails to channel all that power into any single useful direction. Now, let's compare it to the concrete thinking style. How questions, as well as who, when, where, and what. Awareness of real, tangible facts. Focus on specific details. Contextualized thinking. Again, you notice that you're feeling anxious and you're aware of your heartbeat. Here's your thought process. What's happening to me? I think I can feel my heartbeat. How is that possible? I haven't been exercising or anything. Well, it is a little warm in this room, so maybe that's it. Or maybe I just stood up too quickly. It's not just the content that is different here. This is a very different style of thinking. Notice the what and how questions. Notice how these questions are smaller, more targeted, and less abstract, meaning they can actually be answered. Notice how these questions keep awareness focused on the specific details of this moment, the sensation of the heartbeat, and how it may connect to immediate physical experience, i.e., it's contextual. Notice there's no evaluation here, just specific facts in context in a particular moment. Finally, notice that this kind of thinking has a direction. It has movement and a natural endpoint. It poses questions that prompt genuine information finding and problem solving. As you can guess, this style of thinking is associated with better decision making, lower emotional reactivity, quicker recovery after stress or adversity, and greater resilience. Rather than using our minds to endlessly elaborate on the problem, we can instead focus on possible solutions. If our thinking is neutral and not critical, we don't feel as overwhelmed. And by asking more concrete, grounded, and practical questions, we keep our minds tethered to reality rather than encouraging it to spiral out endlessly. While it is possible to be a concrete overthinker, more common in OCD, for example, the presence of overly abstract thinking is almost always a predictor of more anxiety, whereas concrete thinking styles tend to serve a protective function. Does this mean that abstract thinking is bad or unhealthy? Well, absolutely not. Being able to conceptualize at a high level is extremely useful and can help us see outside of and beyond our immediate experience. But unless we're mindful, it's exactly this ability to go beyond that can eventually lead to overthinking, catastrophizing, and anxiety. We need to learn to choose the mode of thinking according to our own ends and what we're trying to achieve. Now, before you make the fatal mistake of overthinking your overthinking or over-abstracting your tendency to over-abstract, ask a few clarifying questions. Is my current style of thinking endlessly opening up anxious new possibilities, or is it helping me narrow down to a useful, practical solution? Is my thinking leading me towards reasonable, values-driven action, or is it a goes-nowhere train of thinking? Am I asking questions that don't actually have answers? Am I disguising doom statements as questions? Am I genuinely moving forward, or am I looping and covering the same ground over and over again? Is my thinking helping me avoid painful emotions or face them? Is my thinking helping me to process my situation or dwell on it? How to come back down to earth. Chronic overthinkers can sometimes find it very difficult to change gear and come into the concrete realm. If we believe that overthinking is useful and helps us to stay safe, we're obviously going to be hesitant to let go of it. But with a little practice, you may find that there is extraordinary relief in dialing things down a notch and coming back to earth, as it were. Overwhelm drops. The sense of urgency and enormity lessens. Everything shrinks down to a more manageable size. That shadow of doom doesn't seem so heavy anymore. Step 1. Catch and stop the why spiral. You'll know that you're caught in anxious over-abstraction if you're torturing yourself with endless why questions, especially the kind that only trigger more questions of the same character. Learn to see why as gasoline on the fire of anxiety. These questions posed as earnest inquiries looking for a resolution, but they often contain their own distortions. Consider this question. Why is life harder for me than it is for other people? It may trigger a long stream of overthinking that is completely irrelevant because, you guessed it, it's not really true that life is harder for you than other people. Don't throw good questions after bad, and don't engage an unanswerable question by asking it more questions. Why me? Would knowing the answer to this make the pain disappear? Why is this happening? A question with an infinite number of answers. Why am I such an idiot? A question or a prompt to self-hate? Why didn't he reply to my text? In the most deeply philosophical sense, who knows? Questions without real answers are simply torture devices. They invite a kind of angst that will certainly make you feel bad, but will do nothing to materially change your circumstances. So, catch the spiral and then tell yourself, I'm caught in abstraction right now. See the mental spinning and churning for what it is. It's not intelligent. It's not a way to solve problems. It's just being stuck. Label that stuck feeling for what it is. Step 2. Convert to a what, when, or how question. Abstracting thought is expansive. Counter that with questions that narrow things down a little for you. What's the issue in one sentence? What's one next step? When exactly will I do it? How do I start in the first 60 seconds? The trick is to keep bringing yourself back to the real world, and the best way to do this is with action. Instead of, why do I feel so bad? Try, what can I do right now to feel a little better? Instead of, why did I say that? Try, how can I apologize and make amends? Instead of, why am I so messed up? Try, how can I take values-based action today? Sometimes the best way to convert a question is to simply eliminate it. If there isn't any values-based action you can take, then you can safely conclude that this thought is just noise and can be disregarded. How can I turn my attention to something more worthwhile right now? Then try to focus on that. Step 3. Make things smaller and more neutral. Notice when you're getting carried away with over-abstraction, and check, are you making sweeping generalizations? Are you piling on judgment? If so, try to make things smaller and more neutral. Are you worried about life or just the half-hour event that's happening this evening? Are you a complete and total failure? Or are you just disappointed with your performance on one specific task in one instance? Is your situation truly bad and hopeless, or is it just not quite what you wanted? Make things smaller. Be specific. Remove value judgments, or at least tell yourself that you'll withhold judgment for a time. Instantly, anxiety and overwhelm reduce. Your mind can take anything and blow it up to gargantuan proportions, then announce to itself that everything's a disaster, but you don't have to let it. Instead, like David Foster Wallace says, just pay attention to what's in front of you. Two thinking styles, one that pulls you deeper into the spiral, and one that walks you back to solid ground. The shift from "why is this happening to me" to "what can I do right now" is smaller than it sounds and more powerful than you'd expect. Here are the primary takeaways from today's episode. Avoid why questions to reduce anxiety. Abstract thinking often leads to endless questioning without solutions. Why questions trigger more of the same and increase anxiety. Use concrete thinking for better resilience. Focus on specific details and context instead of broad concepts. This style helps in making decisions and lowering emotional reactivity. And of course, if you want the complete framework, Nick Trenton's book, Stop Thinking About It, is worth your full attention. You can check it out on Amazon and look for the audiobook on Amazon, iTunes, and Audible. Daniel Levitin supplies us with our quote to close out this episode. Worry is a misuse of imagination. It's applying creative thought to outcomes we fear rather than solutions we can act on.